What's going on, guys? It's FREEDO here for your Overwatch news roundup. We've got some meta discussion-y talk. Seagull weighs in on Doomfist, and a few more things to discuss about the balance of the game. But you may not know this because I don't believe Blizzard has officially announced it yet, although it is in the game client. Season 12 ends in 6 days. No word on when Season 13 will start. Typically, it is about 2 days thereafter. But what I'm more excited about is that if I did my math correctly, the Halloween event launched 2 weeks ago, which means tomorrow new Torbjorn will enter competitive play. So I suppose queue at your own risk. I plan to go in with a team, so the competitive Torbjorn testing will be at their expense, not random teammates that don't want to play with the Torb. So be nice to your teammates, don't force the pick. We'll come back to talk a bit more about Torb later, but for now, let's see what Seagull has to say on the Doomfist meta.
So here's what basically happened. Doomfist was always a god tier versus tanks, but not dive. And then dive fell out of the meta, like Tracer Genji in particular, as a combo together. And people started using Tracer Widow a lot more. And then Tracer fell out of the meta once Brigida was implemented. And once Brigida was implemented, Deathball comps became really popular, which are tank-based, right? They're tanks, they Deathball. It's like Brigida, Lucio. It's usually Lucio plus Brigida plus tanks is the typical like tank comp. It's tanks Overwatch, tank watch. It's very, very common right now. Because you have, just think about how insane the AoE heals of that is. What is it for Brigida? 16 HPS Brigida, 16 HPS Lucio, 10 HPS Cart. That's like what, 42 HPS passive or something? Just sitting around a cart if you have those heroes. What does Doomfist do? He punches you into the ground and he gets 1 billion HP every time he hits something, so he can chain CC the tanks and then not die. And he can also one-shot supports.
Really good summary from our friendly neighborhood Seagull. It's interesting how these things work and oftentimes makes it difficult to see what the upcoming metas of Overwatch will be because of how these knock-on effects play out. Granted, Doomfist has been improved and got his shields buff recently, but that's the least of the reason why he is so good right now. It pretty much comes down to the fact that back in the day, a character like Tracer could do so much work, and although her peak damage might have been lower than Doomfist, she was so much more survivable that there was no point to invest that pick towards a playstyle that was a bit more boom or bust. If you played Tracer well enough, she could get burst kills, but also surviving and whittling down the enemy worked. But now with so much sustain, a character like Doomfist is required a lot of the time to get any impact out of the DPS position. And even then, it can feel hard to kill anything when you're playing up against triple support especially. And now come to think of it, over the course of 3 years of balancing, I believe we've seen every damage character, bar a couple like the builders, be the top of the meta for at least some period of time. And is it finally Torbjorn's turn? Well, at the Beat Invitational recently, Bioweek attempted to use a Torbjorn in the multi-tank mirror setup to try to counter that Brigida slot. They ended up losing this round, but I think if we look more carefully, we can hopefully learn how this play could have been adapted to be even more effective. First off, I think this turret placement is way too close to the action, but because they have the Brigida and you don't, they have more brawl, so I think you have to play for a bit more range damage. Kills get traded back and forth, and at this point, I have the high ground, Anakin. Turret set up, the enemy's backing away, and just kind of a mental error from the main tank here, not at full HP, starts swinging and gets focused down. Play a bit more defensive there with the turret set up. I think they end up winning that point and possibly look a lot different over the course of the rest of this round. And that's the thing with new tech. It's going to take a while for top-level players and pros to play around with Torbjorn to know how to play around him, right? Like how you as a teammate are going to have to adapt what you're doing in order to get him to work. Personally, I think I would like to see another damage character, perhaps not on this map, but Sombra I think would be pretty key because even up against the GOAT's composition, the biggest problem is that the Molten Core ultimate doesn't go through barriers, so it could be hard to get an angle to hit anything with it properly. But farm up for both of those DPS ults, I think we're in business to turn the GOAT's comp into GOAT's cheese. A few more clips for us to look at. It's always a joy to hear EQO give his opinion on anything. Here's a pair of clips of EQO giving his thoughts on the GOAT's comp and Dafran joining the Overwatch League.
A representation of how Brigade works. You play GOATs, you go inside a point, everyone stacks together, you swing like this, and then if someone is low, E her, full HP. And that counters almost every single comp in the game. Nothing has ever been uncounterable. That's true. GOATs is counterable, but it's not about what's counterable or what's not. It's about how many options there is to counter a specific comp, you know? And GOATs is by far the comp that requires the most coordination and there's the least hero picks can counter goats. Like very little team composition can counter goats, and it also depends on the maps. On some maps, goats is absolutely like it's uncounterable. I'm not kidding. On some maps, doesn't matter if you have Pharah, if you have anything, it's uncounterable. Like
Eqo brings up some interesting points here, namely being it's the playstyle of goats that yes, you can pick some things to counter it. And on a lot of maps you can, but it's the straight heads-up playstyle that takes the fight either to you or to the objective that often makes trying to counter it a waste of time. I will say that I think as the game develops, we may see more and more teams look to lean into countering the 3-3 composition even harder, rather than doing these half measures where they sort of place in a character alongside a bunch of other meta characters. For example, I think one of the best things you can do is run Zarya Hammond, but have your whole team play split all the time. Because what the GOATS comp wants to do is pick out a target and dump all their resources into it before you can save it. But if you're set up surrounding them and you use the Wrecking Ball to split them up, set up for big engages with Pile Driver to focus down squishies, make space, and most importantly, move those shields around, you can land your crucial cooldowns and get damage from flank angles that wouldn't be really open to you if you weren't playing such a mobile way. Now, enough on that. Let's hear EQO's thoughts on Dafran joining the Overwatch League.
I talked about it before, but I think Dafran is a really good player. But I think what's gonna maybe hold him down is that he's a really famous player, and people are gonna have expectations, kind of like they did with Sinatra. Like everyone expected when Sinatra came into the Owl, like he's gonna pop off, he's gonna be the one to carry Shock to the victory. But you know, I guess there was like some disappointments by people that were supporting him. I think that Dafran is gonna have kind of the same, and as long as he doesn't, care about it, and he doesn't, I think, then he's gonna be good.
EQO does go on to say that he hopes that Dafran tunes out the noise and is able to focus on his own game and excel as a player. So obviously he's not trying to take shots, but establish just how hard it is to make the leap back into the limelight with a lot of pressure on you. On top of everything EQO said, a lot of Dafran's best heroes right now aren't in the meta. So unless we see a meta swap come Overwatch League time, that could be quite problematic for him or any player that built their name up on some of the heroes we mentioned earlier in the video that were meta for quite a long time, but now we see ourselves in a balanced patch that requires massive burst of impact, the likes of Doomfist, that nobody thought was ever going to be a mainstream meta character. Funny how these things work. Guys, let me know your thoughts on any of the news stories covered here today. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe because we do upload each and every day. So you're going to want to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.